Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to this week's card. I am really excited about this card because I've never done this before, but I've used a two-step stamp by Stampin' Up. So this is my first set like that. And as you can see, you get two different stamps that create these flowers and leaves. So the first thing you do is you stamp the solid image, and I'm using a lighter color. I'm using a Distress ink, spun sugar. And then you have to use your Stamp-A-Majig, and I keep a piece of vellum in with my stamp sets. Then you stamp the second stamp using the darker ink, and that's the shadow area, so you don't even have to think about it. And if you look at this, you'll see it's all dotted where the darker stamp is. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking my aqua painter and I'm just blending that together, and really there's no talent needed here. I mean, it's just you apply water to the dots and then they sort of melt away into the paper. And so that's all I'm doing here, and I'm not doing any lighter or darker anywhere. I'm just coloring over these dots so that they don't appear to be dots anymore. I will say though that if you notice, there are some solid areas, and I'm not touching the solid areas. I'm just going over the dotted areas to get rid of that dotted look. I have more information on my blog about the paper I'm using, and I compared a bunch of different papers, so you might want to go to the description link if you're on description, and click on the link on YouTube if you're there. Anyway, okay, so that's step one. Now step two I'm doing here is, now that I've gone and blended in all those dots, it's dried just a little bit, and I'm going to take my aqua painter and I'm just going to blend the lines between the dark and the light. So I'm really just taking those stark lines that I've created by blending those dots and just applying water to the edge of that so that it blends out just a little bit. Again, it's nothing complicated here. I'm just going around those dark areas and blending it into the spun sugar areas. Now there are some white areas that are left by the two stamps, and for the most part I'm leaving a little bit of that white, but I'm really taking, when I apply the water to the spun sugar, I'm kind of pushing that spun sugar into the white area. I'm leaving just a little white, but most of it is blending it to the spun sugar. And that's it. That's the whole thing. So here's my second flower, and I paused here so you can see the difference between the blended one and the one where it's just dots straight up by the stamps. And I think that's the reason why I never purchased these before, because I thought they looked a little bit fake with all those dots. But when you use Distress ink on watercolor paper, and that's the key here, you really need to use some watercolor paper. And as I said, I did do some comparisons with regular paper and water paper using these inks on my blog. So if you want to go check that out, you can see the difference that watercolor paper makes. Anyway, same steps here. I'm just doing them a little bit faster. That's step one. Now step two, I'm just going in. I'm going to blend those areas that are dark into the lighter area. So the nice thing about this stamp set is that you don't have to know where the shadow areas are. You don't really have to work on one petal at a time and really focus on, okay, where's the light hitting, where's my reflection going to be, where's the dark area, where's the light area. The stamps tell you all that. I have to say, I'm really impressed with the way these stamps come out. It was so easy. And if you look on the right, the colors actually get a little bit more vibrant as it dries. You can tell my first flower to my second flower. So the paper really absorbs the color. Okay, now I'm going to work on my stems. I decided I was just going to freehand them, and because I'm not very good with just going straight to the marker, I get a little bit too nervous. I'm using my pencil to draw them in. I'm going to make them kind of intertwine a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll go over it with the markers. Now you don't want to color directly on the pencil because the pencil marks won't really come off if you put the ink on top of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase it so pretty much all of it's gone except for such a faint line that I can still see, and then I'll color it with the marker. So I'm taking Shabby Shutters, and then I'm going to do a very fine line of peeled paint on the left side. Then I'm going to take a blender pen and I'm just going to blend those two colors together. Alright, once I get my first stem done, I'm going to work on the leaves. And it's the same technique here. I'm going to do the solid stamp first, and I'm going to do shabby shutters, the same color I did on the stem. And then I'm going to take the second part of my stamp and I'm going to use peeled paint. I'm going to stamp right over that. And then I'm going to take my aqua painter. Step 1, just blend all those dots so that the dots disappear. I'm going to do one leaf and then I'll do the other leaf. And that gives the ink enough time to dry just a little bit so that when I go in for step 2, which is just sort of blending the dark area into the light area, it's not going to move a whole lot of ink because it's already been absorbed by the paper a little bit. Now I missed a little piece of the stem there, so I just added it with my fine tip. I'm going to go through this same process with the other flower's stem. And I kind of skipped that so you won't have to sit through it. Alright, then I decided I wanted another leaf. So what I'm going to need to do, because it's behind that flower, is mask the flower. So I've got a piece of scratch masking tape left over, Eclipse masking tape. So I'm going to stamp the first stamp of the flower and then I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to use that to block out the flower so I can stamp, and it looks like it's stamping behind it. So just place that right on top of the flower and then line up my leaf. Again, shabby shutters for the main part, the first stamp. Oh, I realized that I may actually hit some of the watercolor paper with the other leaf, so I put a little bit of extra masking tape down to make sure that doesn't happen. Alright, and then step 2 with my stamping. Peeled paint. Then get rid of my masking tape and blend it with my aqua painter. Alright, to make these flowers pop just a little bit more, I'm taking my Stampin' Up! Marker and I'm coloring the little dots in the middle of the flower black. I'm going to trim that down just a little bit, and then I'm going to take my ruler and my Stampin' Up! Marker and just draw some lines around the edges. I realized I had a marker that had run out of ink or something. I have 2 different versions, and one works and one doesn't work very well, so I always mix them up. I need to just separate them. Anyway, here's my itty bitty banners, which I use a lot, and I'm going to stamp that right on the bottom. I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Majig to make sure it lines up just right. I actually added a piece of masking tape right there because I wanted to hide the area that was behind the line that I just drew. I'm just using some Memento. I'm going to wipe my surface, make sure I don't mess anything up when I turn it over, and just adhere my watercolor paper to some black cardstock. And then I'm going to adhere my black cardstock to a piece of folded 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch Nina Solar white cardstock. And that's it. It comes so pretty, and you really don't have to do much thinking to make this happen. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.